Sara Bernhardt lived from 1862 through 1923. She was probably is definitely one of the most influential artists that came from France from the 20th century. Um, she Some people call her like the first major modern celebrity. Kind of like she's famous because like the way we see celebrities today, our culture of how we idolize them, it could be said that Sarah Bernhardt was the first one to ever have that status. Um, it was She was extremely famous around the world and was so influential in her art and how much she changed the game of theater. She was usually called the Divine Sarah, and that poster shows how she. That's one of her most famous style of posters. That's usually really iconic, and usually it was like they show in really big canvases throughout all the theaters when she was acting. There are five kind of actresses: bad actresses, fair actresses, good actresses, great actresses, and then there is Sarah Bernhardt, as said by Mark Twain. This quote kind of goes to show how big her influence was throughout the world and how respected he was by other important persons in the world at that time. So where she came from? She was born in France as the bastard child of Julia Bernhardt from an unknown father. So that means that her and her mother had to grow and stand up for themselves without a male figure in their lives. That kind of becomes important when you understand the presence and personality that Sarah Bernhardt always had. Um, as a child, she always wanted to be a nun, but it was Duke de Norney who actually, who at the time was a lover of her mother, that decided that Sarah Bernhardt would be a good actress and decided to send her to acting school. At first, she got a slow start in the acting world. Many of the companies she was in, she wasn't being really successful. One time, she got fired after slapping her boss for insulting his sister. But it wasn't until the late 1800s where after during an international tour that she became to have a pretty big status. And when she came back from France, she was famous enough with money enough that she started her own company. But what made her unique? Uh, Sarah Bernhardt was really famous for uh, doing a very different approach to acting. Um, she just didn't she didn't just say her lines. She used her entire body as part of a character. She completely leave those characters to like the voice and the faces and like the way she used her body. They was like really noted at the time. It's kind of like what made her really famous as an actress. Even though some people still didn't like her, it was famous for critics saying how distracting it was, how much she moved, uh, and some kind of overacting. But like it or not, it is what made her really famous. One of the most important parts of her professional life is how she was always challenging herself as an actress. You see a picture of her playing Hamlet, and this one was she was 55. So and that's pretty old for an actress, especially to play especially for how controversial it was that she was playing Hamlet, which at the time was a fully male role. She's probably the first maybe probably is definitely the first famous actress to play professionally Hamlet, which is something that wasn't common at the time. She was after she continued acting even after losing her leg in a stage accident during a rehearsal. Um, Even despite that, she kept acting, and every time she was asked about it, she always asked with this attitude and a strong personality that she always had. Uh, one of the um, One of the major aspects of her career that made her really stand out was how she was always challenging these gender expectations of women, how they should behave and be and look like. Like in the picture, she's wearing a suit with pants and looking, especially looking really androgynous herself, which it wasn't uncommon for her to do, despite how controversial it was at the time. She carried this challenge of society by how she conducted her career. Once she had her own as her own company, she was completely charged of every single aspect of production, for like the role she plays, the plays that they showed, who she hired, who was the staging and production and finance. She was in charge of absolutely 100% of the entire production. She also carries this independence she carried by her personal life. When she was married to Jack the Malon, they built two houses connected, one for him and one for her. This She did this to show like how independent she was, despite her being married. Continuing this, she after they had a son, she made sure that the son had her last name instead of him. Like I said again, to challenge these expectations of gender. She also challenged this by the way she looked. She was heavily criticized by her nose and her messy hair and how thin she was, because at that time, thin women weren't looked favorably. So she was making sure like her picture, she was taking a lot of profile pictures to show her nose and show make sure her hair was as messy as possible. And she was always and it was common for her to use these dresses, very thin dresses that show a lot for the time, as a way and to make sure that her people knew how thin she was, because yeah, at the time this wasn't very approved of. She died of uremia in 1923. Uh, the interesting thing about that picture is that you may think that it's a picture of her death, but it actually isn't. She was known for sleeping. Sometimes she slept in coffins. She did this as a way to get accustomed with that, as to get used to that, and not never be scared of it, because she wanted to enjoy her life as much as possible without fearing something like that. Which I mean, it's just like this last fact, just I think really captures her, how unique she was, how she challenged every single aspect of society and what it was to be expected of artists and woman, which did made her who she is.